Hi everyone, it's Joanne here from Everyday Alignment, and today I want to talk about a subject which probably affects all of us at some point in our lives, because we all have relationships with people, whether that's a romantic relationship, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a relationship with a colleague at work or a team of people. We've all experienced relationships in this world. That's what our human existence is all about, let's face it. And there's a time when all of us have also thought, how can I change someone? How can I change what somebody's doing? How can I change their behaviour? How can I make them like me more? How can I change the way that they act towards me? We've all felt it at some point or another. We wouldn't be human if we didn't. Well, the good news and bad news is the good news is you are able to influence other people's behaviour. The bad news is you can't change people's behaviour. But is that really bad news? I don't think so, because I know something. I wouldn't want somebody coming in manipulating me and trying to change my behaviour. So, it's not a bad thing that we can't do that. It's just the way things are. People have got their own journey through life. They've got their own thoughts, their own feelings. They've got their own beliefs that are under the surface that are making them act the way they do. And also, life is a mirror. So we are also attracting certain behaviours from people because we're on a certain vibrational frequency, which we're going to talk about in a moment as well. But first of all, if you're asking that question, how can I change a particular person, whoever that might be, let's first look at some of the things that aren't going to work, okay? Now, these are the sorts of things that are the lower vibration behaviours. So things like trying to control that person's behaviour in ways that we kind of like, we're very emotional with them. We might get kind of aggressive and angry with them. We might maybe use a little bit of emotional blackmail, not in a bad way, but we just don't know what else to do. So that kind of just makes us feel that we've got some control over that person and situation. We also might start criticising that person more. So we might want to justify the way that we feel about them by trying to get lots of people on side. So every time we're talking to our friends or family members about this person, whether it's your spouse, partner, a close friend or whatever, a work colleague, every time you're talking about that person to somebody else, you might be criticising them heavily, making them look like kind of they're the bad guy in your life, because actually in a way they are, because that's the reality that you're attracting to yourself. That's the vibration that you're attracting into your life. So they are coming across as seeming a bit like the bad guy when really they're not. We're just going to look at that in a moment. So controlling behaviour, criticising them a lot, and the last thing, which is very similar, is like manipulating situations and trying to turn them around so that it's something that kind of suits you. So for instance, if you're in a romantic relationship and that person isn't kind of as into you as you are them, you might kind of try to manipulate them by being quite needy, in a way that is kind of a controlling behaviour, but being needy and kind of making them feel obliged to spend time with you and that sort of thing. Now, let's look at the good news, because there are things that work, not with all relationships, because sometimes relationships are in your life just for a short amount of time and they're not meant to be here long term. But there are some things that you can do to kind of influence this relationship, because if it's something that is supposed to be in your life and you are a vibrational match, then you can easily influence that. But all of that comes from yourself. So you can't directly make the other person change unless you change something that's inside of you, if that makes sense. So what are some of the ways that you can kind of influence people's behaviour? Well, as we know, we are in a belief-based universe and life is a mirror. So it's kind of like a reflection type environment. So whatever you're vibrating at, you are kind of matching. So whatever you've got going on inside of you, inside of your beliefs, your emotions, your thoughts, that is what's going to kind of attract into your life. So it's a bit like looking in a mirror. You're going to get the exact same thing as what you're feeling inside of here, what you're thinking, what your dominant vibration is, if that makes sense. So it might be that this person isn't actually the bad guy. It might be that this person is just matching your vibration. In fact, it's not a might, there's no might about it. They are matching your vibration. We can only attract into our lives what we can perceive at that moment in time. So if we can only look at somebody's bad behaviour, if we can only look at the things that they do wrong, then that's what we are going to see in that person all the time. So every time that we're in the same room as them, or we're talking to them, we're talking about them, we're going to kind of attract those behaviours that we don't want to see, because that's what we're a vibrational match to. And basically you could say that you're getting what you expect. So if you're expecting that person to behave in a certain way, if you're expecting behaviours from that person that aren't what you're looking for from them, what you're looking for from a relationship, then you need to start expecting different things. And the best way to do this is to start looking for that person's good points. Okay, so let's say it's kind of your spouse or partner or someone like that, because that's the person that you're probably spending the most of your time with. It's the person that you're going to have the most emotionally charged relationship with. But this can apply to absolutely anyone in your life. So let's say it is your spouse or your partner, and the behaviours that you're picking up on most of the time are the things that you feel that they're doing to annoy you, the things that they're doing wrong, the things that are kind of making your life difficult. So let's think about that for a moment. If you actually stop and observe your thoughts about that person, you will find that the thoughts that you're thinking most of the time about that person are based around the bad behaviour that you're seeing, the way that they're acting towards you. And it kind of becomes a vicious circle. So the more you think that they're a certain way, the more you attract that as part of your reality. So the more you will start perceiving and seeing those behaviours that you're kind of constantly moaning about, the behaviours that you're constantly thinking about. Okay, so the best way to do this is to start switching that around. So start shining the light on the person's positive aspects, the positive behaviours of that person. Now, in particular, this is easier in a way if it's your spouse or partner or somebody that's very close to you, because there was a time when you met, or in the first stages of your relationship with that person, whoever it is, that you felt very differently about them. You saw all of their positive aspects, even if you did see a few flaws. And let's face it, we've all got them. None of us are perfect, and that doesn't matter, because none of us are supposed to be. But you saw all of their good points. The things that you focused on were the things that you kind of fell in love with about that person. Or if it's a close friend, the things that you liked about that person. There was a stage in your life that you were a vibrational match to them, and you came together. And that's because you were both focusing on, there was some sort of common ground which kind of got you together in the first place. And, a love developed, and you can't develop love for somebody unless you're a certain match to it in that first place. But I think as time's gone on, certain things have happened. You started focusing on different things. So by shining your light back on the behaviours that you like about that person, that can make an absolutely huge difference. And I know, because I've done this myself. I've done it in my personal relationships. I've done it in my work relationships, where I've thought a certain way about somebody, and, I've realised that my thoughts are creating the type of relationship that we're having. So I have totally changed that around just by thinking different thoughts about people. And sometimes it's a case of, let's look at some of the things that they do and the reasons behind some of the things that they do. So there might be something that's inside them, some sort of insecurity or neediness, that is causing them to act that way. And sometimes just even being aware of that can make a real big difference about the way that you think about them. And then what you'll find is, as you start thinking about this person differently, and I love Abraham Hicks when they talk about the book of positive aspects, and I know that this is something that I've used, in my personal relationships. If you start making a daily list of like 10, 20 things that you love about that person, even if you're kind of repeating those things day in, day out, just focusing on the things that you love about that person, okay? And I know it might sound crazy when, if you've got a really sort of tense relationship with someone, it might be really hard to look for those things, but you will find them. Just look for them. So it might be, something that they said to you that is pleasant that day. It might be that they give great hugs. It might be that they're kind to other people. It might be that, they're a great parent to your children. It might be that, they're always a good listener, that they brought you a cup of tea in the morning. I don't know, whatever it might be, you can think of some positive aspects about that person. And write down 10 to 20 a day, just anything that sort of comes into your mind. And if you can't think of any positive aspects right now, if you're really in that kind of tense relationship state and you just can't think of them, then think back to when you first met. Think back to, I don't know, when you kind of went out on a date or some sort of event where you had an amazing time together, and you laughed a lot and you just had a great time. Think about those things and start writing a list of some of the things that you remembered from that event or from that date. So it could be, about how loving they were. It could be about how they made you laugh, how you found their jokes funny, how you loved it when they held your hand. It could be absolutely anything, as long as you're thinking about the positive aspects only, and just let the others fall away and just focus on this activity for a certain amount of days, and you'll find that things will start turning around, because you'll start seeing that person in a different light. And when you see someone in a different light, then you will start to attract a different behaviour, because vibrationally they can't show you what you're not a match with. So, in your mirror, you will start to see those positive aspects come out of that person, and not the things that you were seeing previously when you were on a completely different vibration. So that's the first thing, is looking at these positive aspects of this person. That's like the first thing. The second thing is start appreciating the person, okay? And this could be little things. So even if they just do something around the house, even if they do something that helps you out in your life, if it's like a friend or a work colleague, start thanking them, start appreciating them. And in your heart, really sort of feel that appreciation for the things that they do, no matter how small, because you can get into this kind of cycle of, because you're only looking at somebody's bad points, you just criticise them all the time. You stop seeing all the little things that they might do. I know that, especially when you're talking about a spouse relationship, and I will make some other videos about this, because my husband and I went through a real rough patch and we totally changed it around. So I know that I've got lots of information that can help other people in that situation. But if you start looking for all the little good things that that person does, doesn't matter, how small, you start seeing more of them. And it's because it's almost like when you're only looking at their bad behaviour, it's almost like you're blind to anything else, like you're blind to the good parts of that person, which is such a shame, because that's what you're shutting yourself off from. So you need to kind of change things up so that you're a vibrational match with that type of thing again, and that you start seeing all the great things that that person does, and not the things that kind of get on your nerves or create the tension between you. And the last thing with regard to that really is about thinking about your own behaviour, because we're very quick to blame other people, we're very quick to want other people to change, but we don't often look at ourselves. We don't kind of look ourselves in the mirror and say, well, what is it that I'm putting out there which is attracting all of this into my life? How am I acting? How am I treating this person? Is every experience they have with me, is it me being, emotional or nagging or manipulative? Is it me being, critical and just moaning all the time, so never kind of praising them or appreciating them, things like that? It could even go the other way, is my behaviour with them constantly needy? So when I'm around them, it kind of gives off this vibe of like being needy and a little bit suffocating. So start thinking about, who you are, and if you were in their shoes, would you want to be around you? Okay, and I'm not saying that you've got to totally change your personality, but we all need to accept our responsibility for the part we play in our relationships. We live in a world where human relationships is just part of our day-to-day experience. Without that, it's a very lonely existence. So they're there no matter, how annoying they can be. So, that's a two-way thing. It's not just the other person. It's not just you. The only thing and the only person you can change is yourself. So apart from thinking about, what you can change about how you think about that person, what you can also change is how you're acting yourself, and how you're reacting to that person in everyday situations. Because sometimes when you stop and think about it, you'll realise, if you could observe yourself, you'd realise that actually you're making the situation harder, you're making it more tense, and you're create more friction just by the way you're being when you're around this person, simply because of what you're focusing on. And, if all else fails and none of those things work, then it may be that it's just time for you and that person to kind of part ways. It might be time for that person to leave your life. And that's, it's not a bad thing. It's a hard thing. It can be a really difficult thing, but sometimes that's the way life goes. But please, please, please don't give up on a relationship just because you haven't kind of made that effort to change your focus, to change the way that you feel about that person, to change the things that you see in that person, and just to change the way that you start appreciating that person, because that really can make all the difference in your relationship. And I know, like I said, I know from personal experience that some relationships are definitely worth saving. So don't try to change another person. You can't change another person, but you can certainly influence them by the way that you see them, the way you're acting, and what you're attracting from that person by the way that you're appreciating them and, just interacting with them on a day-to-day basis. So I hope that video's helped. I'll be back with another one real soon, especially around this topic of relationships, because like I say, it's one close to my heart, and I hope that I've got a lot that will help other people. So until my next video, you take very good care of yourself. Bye.